I'm with legendary Shabana Azmi ji here in Hollywood. It's always such a pleasure to see you. Welcome.
Thank you. It's lovely to catch up with you again.
And your play yesterday, Kaify Aur Main, was a sold-out play. I personally saw it and loved it. Let's start from the beginning of the inspiration. What inspired you to do this play?
Well, actually, my mother has written a book in Urdu called Yaad Ki Reh Guzar. And then that's been translated into several languages, including Japanese. And so it was really a one-off thing that we had done for some anniversary of my father's passing away. And so what Javed did is picked up some passages from the book of Yaad Ki Reh Guzar and got some passages from various interviews of my father, Kaify Saab, on TV and in print, etc. And then collated them together with his poetry, the story of their lives, songs from his films, etc. And it just became this incredible theatrical experience. And actually, Javed says that he had thought it was a one-off thing. If he knew that this was going to become like a serious play and that we've done 100 shows of it, he would probably not have attempted to do it. But I think for me, Kaify Aur Main is much more than just a play, because I think it's an extraordinary chance for me to share with the audiences the lives of these two extraordinary people. And it's an extremely inspiring story, which is why I think the standing ovation happens inevitably. But you know, it's got romance, it's got music, it's got poetry, it's got drama, it's got a social conscience, it's got something for every body. And for me, basically, the fact that a man like my father, who was in the later years of his life got paralyzed, and instead of giving up in despair, he actually went and used that time to put on its foot a village that had been lost in time, his village, Mijwa, in which he was born. And that's how the thing happened.
So was this a little bit more difficult or challenging for you as you were playing your own mother?
Absolutely. I don't think that there is such an instance anywhere in the world. And my mother's also an extraordinary actress. I mean, she's really, really a very good actress. And I actually learned acting at her feet, because I was just about 4 months old when she would strap me on her back and take me for rehearsals to Prithvi Theatre. Then I've seen her over the years get into costume of the part and inhabit the world of the character several days before the actual launching of the play. Now, to be able to do it, it's her words. I know that every single word that I'm speaking is true. And then to be able to play it is very difficult. Let me tell you, it's one of the toughest things that I've done.
I can just imagine. And what do you think your father would feel had he been here right now about this play?
Embarrassed.
Really?
Well, knowing Abba, he was very modest, you know. I mean, he was quite extraordinary because he did amazing things, but he was very self-effacing and he never turned the spotlight on himself and he'd say, "Aisi kaun si baat hai," etc. But I think for my mother, when she watches it, even today, it's very, very fulfilling, because she feels that she's told this story which the world now knows and draws inspiration from.
Not only are you emoting your parents' story, but you're also emoting it with your husband. How does that change the variables?
Well, absolutely, because firstly, you know, Javed and my father in so many ways are so similar that I don't think that there's any actor in the world who would be able to get the humor, who would be able to get the intensity, who would be able to get the entire cultural history and perspective of those times. So I feel very blessed that Javed not only wrote the play but also agreed to play Kaify. And on an aside, for me it's wonderful because it's one of those rare opportunities when Javed and I get time to spend together. So like this 1 month tour is probably the longest time we've spent together in about a year, in about 3-4 years. So it's wonderful.
And you have done so much to make sure your father's legacy continues. Last time we spoke, you talked to me about the Mirjwa project. Tell me what has happened since.
But we have been very lucky because Mijwa, like I told you, is a tiny little village that was buried in time till my father decided to take it up, and then started with schools. There are 3 schools. There's an inter-college. There's a computer center. There is a tailoring and embroidery center where the Bollywood designer Manish Malhotra has now adopted it. And so he's making costumes, if you please, that Naomi Campbell has worn and Priyanka Chopra has worn and Aishwarya Rai has worn. And this is such a tiny little village. But what's for me very, very heartening is that the ability of these women now to earn their own living has changed the status quo within the family. So they are now, from being regarded as liabilities, now they are being looked upon as assets. And women are also dealing with choices they themselves make about their lives, which I think is really fascinating. What I would like to acknowledge really from our supporters in America is that Home of Hope, which is based in the Bay Area, is an NGO founded by this extraordinary woman, Nilima Sabarwal, who came to Mijwa many years ago and has then been associated with us. They're doing wonderful things with us. And one of those things is that they're teaching Skype. They're teaching English through Skype. Wow. From here to the little girls in Mijwa. There's also a foundation called Ann Foundation based in New York that first started this project. And so technology is now being able to bridge the gaps that we had in education, where it was difficult to find tutors who would be ready to come to a tiny village and teach there. So again, another lovely story is a young boy, again in the Bay Area, just 14 years old, Gulram. He came to Mijwa, came to a village for the first time in his life, got completely taken up by the children of the school, and has now taken up the sole responsibility of educating them in sport. And so he is collecting funds, just such a young child. And he has now taken it upon himself that he is going to make these really good sports players. I think it's fabulous.
Absolutely fantastic. And how can our viewers get involved with the project?
You know, I really think that there are 2-3 foundations over here. One is Home of Hope, which is based in the Bay Area, and there is Share and Care, which is based in New York. And both these organizations work with us. And so if you would get in touch with them and volunteer, we need help. We need volunteers. We need people to work on our website. We need people to be able to make project proposals, and we need money.
Is acting different for you on cinema as opposed to theater?
Yes. Yes and no. Yes, because the immediacy of the theatre experience, where you're immediately getting a reaction from the audience and knowing whether you're being able to make the connection or not, is a very special feeling. It gives you a certain kind of tautness in the stomach. Whereas in cinema, you cannot lie in a close-up. If you've got a 75 mm close-up, then you can't be telling lies. Whereas in theatre, you can get away with it. But ultimately, theatre is an actor's, it's an actor's playground ultimately, and cinema is the director's. So in that sense, but I think my training is in film, but because I almost learned theatre acting by a process of osmosis, it's something that continues to give me a huge sense of thrill.
I've often wondered, one last question, and this I've actually personally wondered, you have such a plethora of talent in your family. You, your husband, Zoya, also Farhan, all of them exemplary talents. I've often wondered what it would be like to be a fly on the wall and just listen to your dining table conversation.
People think that when we get together, there's this high intensity intellectual conversation. It's either about films or about politics that all of us are engaged in various ways. Farhan has put up an organization called Men Against Rape and Discrimination called Mard, where he's doing wonderful work because he is going to colleges, going to young people and revisiting notions of masculinity and saying, why is masculinity about six-pack abs and about power and all that? Why isn't it also about compassion and love and equality, etc.? So all of us are involved in various things. But when we are together, we only discuss food. So we come together for lunch, then we say, what are we going to have for tea? Then we say, what are we going to have for dinner? And it just carries on because we are huge foodies, and that's all we talk about.
Thank you so much for speaking to us. Always a pleasure seeing you again.
Thank
Wish
you.
you continued success.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It was a pleasure.